Prince Harry is back on the London courthouse steps, smiling for the cameras, while suing one of the biggest newspaper groups in Britain for allegedly snooping on him for years. And yes, it's giving final boss battle, with Elton John and Elizabeth Hurley on his team. But before getting into it all, press the like and subscribe buttons and share our videos. We spend a considerable amount of time and energy putting together these videos, and we would really appreciate your support. Also, don't forget to comment. Alright, now let's get into this very expensive, very British, very public showdown, because on Monday, Prince Harry rolled up to London's High Court for what's being described as his third and final outstanding legal battle against the UK tabloid press. And the photos? He looked weirdly cheerful. Navy suit, big grin, little wave to onlookers like he's arriving at a charity gala instead of a 9-week legal cage match. His spokesperson told Page 6 he's feeling, which is an interesting choice of words when your opponent is the same media ecosystem you've blamed for a lifetime of chaos. This case is against Associated Newspaper Limited, ANL, best known as the publisher behind the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday, and MailOnline. And Harry is not walking into this alone. The list of claimants reads like the most chaotic dinner party guest list you've ever seen. Elton John and his husband David Furnish, actresses Elizabeth Hurley and Sadie Frost, actor Jude Law, former lawmaker Simon Hughes, and Baroness Doreen Lawrence. Yes, that Doreen Lawrence, whose son, Stephen Lawrence, was murdered in a racist attack in 1993. NBC points out something awkward but important here. The Daily Mail was once praised for campaigning hard for justice in that case, so the fact that she's now suing the publisher is not nothing. So what are they actually accusing ANL of? In plain English, the claimants allege unlawful information gathering and grave breaches of privacy. The allegations include commissioning private investigators and using illegal tactics, things like phone tapping and hacking, bugging vehicles, and accessing private medical and financial records through deception. The time period being discussed is largely between 1993 and 2011. And if you're thinking, that's a long time ago, yes, that's part of why this trial is such a big deal, because the claimants are basically arguing there was a system, a pattern, a machine that ran for years. ANL, for its part, is not doing the sorry if you felt offended routine. They have strenuously denied the allegations. They've described the claims as preposterous and without foundation, and CBS says the publisher has framed it as a kind of coordinated effort driven by the claimant's personal dislike of the media. ANL has also suggested that evidence from private investigators can't be trusted, which is honestly a bold defense when the entire point is, allegedly, that newspapers used private investigators precisely to do things they couldn't do in public. Now, the trial is expected to last 9 weeks. 9 weeks. That's not a little court appearance you squeeze in between tea and therapy. That's a full season of prestige television, except the plot twist is legal bills. The judge in this case is Matthew Nicklin, and NBC notes his decision won't just shape reputations, it could also decide who ends up paying tens of millions of dollars in legal costs. And that's where the stakes start to feel very real, because if Harry wins, it's a major public validation of what he says he's been screaming into the void for years. And if he loses, as one royal editor put it to CBS, it's huge jeopardy, not just because of cost, but because he pushed all the way to trial instead of settling. Harry is expected to be the first witness, with testimony anticipated later in the week, and CBS reports that in a witness submission, Harry describes the alleged intrusion in intensely personal terms, saying it was disturbing to feel like his every move, thought, or feeling was being tracked and monitored just for the Mail to make money out of it. He called it terrifying and said it made him paranoid beyond belief, isolating him. That's the emotional core of his case. Not just they did something illegal, but they changed how I lived, how I trusted, how I moved through the world. CBS also reports Harry's case is based on 14 separate newspaper stories. And when you zoom out, this isn't just about headlines, it's about Harry's long-standing belief that the press didn't just cover his life, they hunted it. He has blamed the media for bullying and harassment, and he has long connected paparazzi culture and relentless pursuit to the circumstances around his mother, Princess Diana's death. Diana died in a 1997 car crash while being pursued by photographers, and Harry has been very consistent for years that in his mind this is not ancient history, it's the origin story. In court on Monday, CBS says Harry listened as his lawyer argued there was clear, systematic, and sustained use of unlawful information gathering at both the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. And part of how the claimants plan to build their case is by leaning on testimony from private investigators who say they worked on behalf of associated newspapers. This is where the details get very spy novel but make it British tabloid. A private investigator named Steve Whitmore said in a witness statement that journalists who used him and editors who approved it knew exactly what they were doing. He described himself as a practitioner of the dark arts and basically argued if reporters could have gotten what they wanted legitimately, they wouldn't have needed someone like him. Another witness, identified only as Deputy Dano, claims he was paid the equivalent of more than $1 million by the Mail over more than 20 years of work. Again, ANL disputes this kind of evidence and argues it's not reliable, but it's a major part of what the court will be weighing. And let's be clear, Harry is not new to this. In 2019, he kicked off a major phone hacking case against the owners of the Mirror, and CBS notes he became the first senior royal to give in-person testimony in a British court in more than 130 years. In that Mirror case, courts ruled in his favor multiple times. He also settled a claim against Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers, the publisher of The Sun. That settlement included a formal apology for serious intrusion and a multi-million-dollar payout, according to CBS. NBC describes it as a substantial damages and an apology, so Harry comes into this ANL case with a very specific mindset. He's fought, he's won, and he's not here to quietly move on. NBC also highlights why this particular lawsuit is being watched so closely, because until now, associated newspapers hadn't been sued for phone hacking in the same way some other publishers have been. And if the claimants prove their allegations, it could seriously reshape how people talk about that era of British journalism, who was in it, who wasn't, and who managed to avoid the spotlight until now. There's also a strategy element here that NBC's sources describe as a mosaic of inferences, meaning the claimants may not have a single smoking gun document that says, yes, hello, we hacked this phone, but they'll try to show that, put together, the pieces strongly suggest unlawful activity did happen, and the legal standard they're aiming to meet is essentially more likely than not beyond all doubt, but convincing enough that the court believes the unlawful gathering probably occurred. Now, beyond the courtroom drama, there's the royal family drama, because with Harry, there's always a second plot running underneath the first. NBC's royal contributor Daisy McAndrew said Harry's various legal issues and trials have been a primary cause of the breakdown in his relationship with King Charles. Her point was simple. People are hoping that once these legal battles are over, Harry can turn his attention to reconciling with his family. And that's where this gets messy, because reconciliation is one of those words that sounds nice until you ask, okay, and then what? NBC's royal contributor Emily Nash added another layer. Members of the royal family do pursue legal action when they feel wronged, but they tend to do it quietly and often settle out of court, partly to draw personal information into public view. And Harry does not do low-key. Harry does global press tour. Harry does I will see you in court, actually. Which, listen, may be principled. It may also be the reason family members feel like every private conflict becomes a public documentary. And then we get to the security issue, the other massive thorn in this whole family situation. Harry has been battling to reinstate police protection when he's in the UK. He lost a legal challenge in May, according to NBC, and afterward he told the BBC he didn't feel it was safe to bring his family back because he couldn't guarantee their protection. He said his father wouldn't speak to him because of this security stuff. He also said he would love reconciliation and that there's no point in continuing to fight anymore, adding a line that hit hard, "I don't know how much longer my father has." Page 6 also frames security as the sticking point in the estrangement, and Fox News Digital goes even further into the current speculation, whether Harry's security situation could be reviewed or potentially changed. Fox reports that a review is underway, and cites sources saying positive considerations were being made by the governing body, according to People magazine. Fox also cites an insider quoted by the Mail on Sunday saying security is now nailed on for Harry. Though that's not confirmed as fact, it's a claim attributed to sources. Buckingham Palace, meanwhile, has repeatedly denied that King Charles has the power to reinstate Harry's security, per Fox.
So, to summarize, Harry believes security is essential. Commentators say it's a major cause of the rift, and official channels insist the king can't just wave a wand and fix it. And this week in London, don't expect a surprise father-son lunch date. Page 6 reported earlier that Harry wouldn't reunite with Charles during his time in England. The king is currently in Scotland, and Harry's schedule was described as very tight with the trial, making it extremely difficult to plan anything. NBC similarly notes Charles is in Scotland for his traditional post-Christmas stay, which typically lasts most of January. So if you were hoping for a hallmark moment on the courthouse steps, you might want to lower your expectations to the floor. That said, there are signs, however small, that things have been inching along. Page 6 reported Harry and Charles had a private meeting in September 2025, describing it as their first sit-down in more than a year. NBC also reports a September meeting, but describes it as the first in 19 months. Different math, same headline. They met privately after a long stretch, so communication isn't totally dead. It's just heavily lawyered and emotionally complicated. Now let's talk Meghan, because any conversation about Harry in the UK eventually turns into, is Meghan coming? Fox News Digital reports Harry is expected to be in Birmingham this July for the one-year-to-go celebrations for the Invictus Games, and People magazine reported he hopes Meghan will join him. But Fox also reports an Archewell spokesperson said these reports are entirely speculative and that no decision has been made. Meghan hasn't been to the UK since September 2022, during the funeral events for Queen Elizabeth II. Their kids, Archie and Lilibet, have only been back once since the move, for the Platinum Jubilee, in June of that year, and they're being raised in California. Fox's reporting is basically a collection of expert takes, and the theme is consistent: security, security, security. One commentator claimed Meghan would only return if she's assured automatic armed security, and that the couple objects to having to request protection on a case-by-case basis. Another suggested Meghan may also want assurances about how she'll be treated and whether she can maintain her individuality. And then there's the public reception angle. Fox includes experts who believe Meghan would face a cold welcome, and it references claims that she was booed the last time she visited, when she descended the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral. Whether she comes or not, the reporting makes clear the couple's risk calculation isn't just about logistics, it's also about optics. And optics, frankly, are what Harry is fighting over in court too. Because even if this case is fundamentally about alleged information gathering, it's also about the story of Harry, the prince who says the press targeted him, pushed him, profited off him, and left him living in a permanent state of defensive alertness. A source quoted by People told the outlet this legal battle is the culmination of what has been years of litigation, following his lawsuits against The Sun and The Mirror, and that Harry sees it as an injustice that needs to be righted. The source's argument is basically he has the means to do it and the will, so he's doing it. But there's a very real question hanging over all of this. Even if Harry wins, what exactly does winning buy him? Vindication? Sure. Possibly damages? Maybe a public reckoning for a media group that says it did nothing wrong. But does it buy peace? Does it buy reconciliation? Or does it just reinforce the idea that his identity is permanently stuck in battle mode? Because on the other side, you have the royal family, where, as NBC notes, the tradition is never complain, never explain, and where McAndrews says Charles and William may want guarantees that Harry will stop publicly airing grievances through the press, books, and documentaries. Which is a complicated demand given the irony of asking someone to stop talking to the press while he's literally in court accusing the press of illegal tactics. It's like telling someone, please stop discussing the thing you keep suing people about. Sure, simple. So, here's where things stand. Harry is in London, facing down ANL in a trial expected to run 9 weeks. He's expected to testify, the allegations are sweeping and serious, and ANL is denying everything with its whole chest. The verdict could affect reputations and legal costs on a massive scale, and hovering behind it all is the bigger personal story: security disputes, family estrangement, and whether finishing this legal marathon is the thing that finally frees Harry up to rebuild relationships or just clears the calendar for the next fight. Either way, keep your eyes on what comes out in testimony, what the judge makes of the private investigator evidence, and whether anyone blinks before the end. Because if this really is the final showdown, then Harry didn't show up to make small talk. He showed up to make a point. And if you want more breakdowns like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend who loves a messy media versus royal saga, and drop a comment with your take. Do you think this ends in vindication, a settlement, or just another round of headlines?